Good evening and welcome to the District 3 Budget Town Hall. I'm Chris Trumbauer, the Budget Officer, and we're going to get started in just a second, but I want to run through how this is going to work this evening. In a moment, we're going to hear from County Executive Pittman with some brief opening remarks, followed by Councilmember Nathan Volke. Then we'll run through a brief presentation to go through some budget highlights, and then we'll get to the most important part, which is public comment. So everyone will have 2 minutes to speak what they want to. That'll be facilitated by our constituent services staff. And then we'll have closing remarks from the council member, and then County Executive Pittman will close us out. So thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to a good night. And with that, I will turn it over to County Executive Stuart Pittman.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight. This is the 7th of 7 budget town halls. So it's last chance to be heard before we go and put together the budget that we'll then send to the council. And then you'll have a couple of hearings in front of the council where you can comment on what we've produced. And I'm not going to say much now. I just want to acknowledge a few of the staff that we have here, starting with from Congressman Sarbanes' office, Bridget Smith. And then I have our Chief Administrative Officer, Matt Power, listening in, our Chief of Staff, Kay Bodgester Brown, our czar DCAO for land use, Lori Rhodes, and our DCAO or czar for Health and Human Services, Pam Jordan. And then in Aging and Disabilities, we have our Director, Carissa Gowan, Director of Public Works, Chris Phipps, Director of Rec and Parks, Rick Anthony, and from Economic Development Corporation, CEO Ben Burge. So those folks are here not because they have to be, but they want to hear what you're saying. They are taking notes and probably texting their staff to get them to address immediate issues that you may raise. And then they may be including some of what you say in their budget requests to us when they come to us very soon with their supplemental requests. So I'm going to turn it over to your county councilman, he's going to go over just an introduction. So Nathan Volke, and then we'll go do our slideshow from there. Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive, and thank you for putting this on again this year. This is now the third one of these we've done. So 3 years down, 3 budget town halls. I appreciate the opportunity to get to be here with everyone this evening. I wish it was in person. I think we all probably feel that way, and hopefully we're getting soon to a point where we can do that. But for this budget, there are just a couple things that I want to cover as we get started so that everybody sort of remembers where we've been and where we're going. So we've had 2 budgets that I've dealt with on the council so far. And unfortunately, I've voted against both of them because I haven't been able to support them with some of the things that have been included. So specifically, year one, we saw one of the biggest tax increases that had ever happened in this county's history. At that time, we were 5th lowest in the state in terms of property tax rate and 3rd lowest in the state for income tax. That budget increased the income tax from 2.5% of your income to 2.81% of your income. So for the average family, that increase coupled with the property tax increase took your tax bill up about $550 a year. In year 2, we were still the 5th lowest in the state in terms of property tax rate and the 4th lowest in terms of income tax rate. And what we did in that budget, the council elected to use a lot of fund balance money that was there to avoid raising taxes. I had put in a bill to try to increase the ceiling on the rainy day fund so that we could put more money away, knowing that COVID was unpredictable and we weren't sure what we were going to need. Unfortunately, that didn't pass in the council, and so we didn't max out the rainy day fund as much as I would have liked us to. I would have liked to have seen the percentage go up quite a bit, and we didn't have the ability to do that. We also, unfortunately for our district in last year's budget, lost about $40 million for a new elementary school. That was supposed to go in the Solly corridor, specifically to address the growth that we've seen up on Marley Neck Boulevard and Solly Road. That was pushed out 3 years in favor of a new elementary school over in District 4. So I was pretty disappointed about that. We also saw $20 million in road improvements for Mountain Road that were taken entirely and used in other parts of the county. And we saw about $6 million in improvements for Fort Smallwood Park that were pushed off another year in the budget that have not been funded yet. So this year, we're going to hear more from the county executive shortly, but we've actually moved up to 7th in terms of the property rate in the state. So if we go back to year one, at that time for the property tax, we were 5th, now we're up to 7th. And in terms of income tax, we used to be 3rd, now we're up to 4th. And one of the things that we'll probably see in this budget, I would anticipate, is that because of the hiring freeze in the county, there's a good deal of savings. For instance, Mountain Road, our DPW out there department has 12 vacancies just at the Mountain Road facility, which is a big reason why when we get complaints about roads and potholes and things that we need to fix, it's extremely hard to get those done because we're so short-staffed. And that hiring freeze throughout the past year has certainly allowed the county to save a lot of money that otherwise would have been spent on personnel costs. So that's certainly going to be something that is used this year in the budget, I would expect, to cover some of the things that are going to be funded. So with that, I'm looking forward to this budget. I'm looking forward to seeing what's in there. I'm hopeful that we don't see any tax increases. The Spending Affordability Committee for the county has recommended about a 2% increase in the growth of the budget. The first year, we saw a much higher growth of the budget. It was closer to about 7%. So that's pretty high. And we've actually looked over the past few years, and the growth of the budget is certainly income for the past 5 years. So I'm hopeful that we can keep the budget in check this year and not go too much higher. But there are a couple good things. I did just get news that the contract on Downs Park and the amphitheater there looks like it's going forward, and we should be getting that groundbreaking sometime pretty soon. And as anybody who's driven by on Mountain Road has seen, Jacobsville Fire Station is underway. They're building it, and hopefully that gets wrapped up pretty soon, and we'll have that as a new amenity for the district. So with that, I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say tonight in terms of thoughts on the budget, what we can do, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and just let us know. So with that, thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to get started with our presentation. I'll do the first few slides and turn it over to the county exec. So everybody, here where we are in the budget, and you can see we're at the stage where that's circled right now. We're at the very beginning of February. We're wrapping up our budget town hall meetings. We actually do have one more next week. So this is the 6th of 7th. I know they fly by, but we do have one more. So the important thing, a couple of important things I want everyone to see here. First, if you look at the capital budget program, it actually starts all the way back in September. So pretty much as soon as we wrap up the current year budget, we start on the next year's budget. Departments work to get their requests in, and we are making final decisions on those initial requests now. And in fact, on February 12th, we will be submitting the initial departmental requests to the Planning Advisory Board for their review and deliberation. So that's a big step that's happening next week. The operating side is humming along now too. The budget office has received departments' proposed operating budgets. We're going line by line through them and trying to make sure that they're tight and that we find all the savings we can. And this is all to get the budget ready for final review by the administration in the March and April timeframe. So we have to introduce the budget this year, the county executive's proposed budget, on April 30th in accordance with the charter, and then the county council will have until June 15th to deliberate and vote on final passage. And of course, the new fiscal year starts on July 1st. So we can go to the next slide. What you see here is where the money is coming from. So as Councilman Volke mentioned, we have some of the lowest tax rates in the state, but we are able to generate $1.7 billion, that's billion with a B, to our general fund. You see where this comes from on the list on the right. We have property taxes and local income taxes, the two biggest chunks by far. And to the right of each list, you'll see a little green arrow pointed up or a red arrow pointed down, and that's an indicator of if things went up or down from the previous year. So folks might remember that last year, right as we were putting the budget together, is when the COVID crisis was really hitting and being impacting a lot of different decisions. We revised our revenue estimates down significantly. We wanted to adjust to the to the realities of what was happening with COVID. What we have found now, looking back, is that the impacts weren't as great as we had feared. that is certainly good news, and it's due in large part because the federal stimulus was very helpful. So it was helpful to individual families, it was helpful to businesses, and so that has helped keep our revenue estimates not as bad as we had originally feared. The caution tale there is we want to keep an eye on the long-term economic indicators and make sure that we're looking good going forward. So if we move down the list, recordation and transfer tax is our next biggest category. That's 95 million right now. The real estate market is actually still pretty hot, so we're hopeful that we might be able to revise that up a little bit more before the end of this year. And if you go down, you see some other things like fund balance and local sales tax, state shared revenue. This is the casino funds and some other things. And you see a lot of these categories have the down facing red arrow, which means that's less revenue than previous year, which is typically unusual for a budget. Usually, we get about the same or a little bit more year over year as things tend to grow. So we can move to the next slide and we'll see the other side of the books. This is where the money goes. So the thing that'll jump out at you here is the big bar at the top. That's our friends at the Board of Education. We're giving them about $857 million to operate an excellent school system and give our students the best education that they can get. That's followed by public safety. So that's police and fire and detention and other agencies like that at 333 million. And then going down there, the general government operations and then our human services sector. Debt service is the interest that we pay on bonds, and that's how we finance all of our capital improvement projects. So that's very important. Then we have our land use section, and then we get down to our component units. So that's community college, library, and the judiciary round out the list there. So we can go to the next slide. We'll get a little bit more detail on our Board of Education funding. So we give them direct funding of about $750 million in the most current budget. And then there's a couple other things that we add to that. So we pay the debt service for school capital projects. That's about 85 million. And then we pay for school health officers, very important, especially these days. That's 15 million. And then school safety. So this is the school resource officers and the crossing guards. That's about another 7.5. So you total that all up, you get that big $857 million number. And then as the box on the right shows us, that's a little bit more than half of all of the county operating budget goes to the school system. So that's a quick summary of the numbers, and it's my pleasure now to turn it back over to County Executive Pittman, who run through some budget highlights of the current year.
Thanks, Chris. And I want to just go through a few categories of where we've invested significantly in the last budget, but really in the last 2 years, starting with public safety. I think over the last 2 years, we've had about a 10% increase in funding for the police department. And that's a combination of getting our number of officers up to the standard that is established by the Police Chiefs Association, International Police Chiefs Association. They say we should be at 826 sworn officers. When I came in, we were closer to 700. We're getting close to 800, and it was mostly by filling positions that already existed that had never been filled. And we've had a similar situation with fire where we haven't had enough firefighters to staff the apparatus that go out, and it's been dangerous situations in some cases. And so we got a federal grant, the SAFER grant, to be able to help us pay for the first few years part of the salaries of our new firefighters. And they've been coming through the academy, and we've got great young men and women joining our fire department and EMS folks. But that's costing us some money. And then what we did was to bring our firefighters and police up to the level of the average level of our region for pay, so that we could get the best and the brightest and improve the morale in both those departments and pay them what they deserve. So that cost us some money this last year to do that, and we think it was the right thing to do. And going forward, we think we'll be in better shape as a result of it. So next slide. On education, Nathan's right. We had a significant investment that first year to catch up really with classroom size problems. We had to reduce our class sizes somewhat by adding new teachers and additional positions, and then also make up some back steps that teachers hadn't been paid in their contracts, and work to get their pay closer to the regional average. And this last year was a leaner year. We had a projection of 40 million less in revenue. As a result of the pandemic, we were being pretty conservative in our estimates so that we would end the year with a good fund balance. And so we did need to keep up though with the growing population in this county as a result of development, and had to do 96 new classroom teachers just to keep up and to staff our new high school at Crofton. And then special ed, we were very understaffed and needed to address that. So we had to do 76 new positions there. And then behavioral health specialists is an area that I think we all agree we need to do better for our students with mental health services, and added 12 new positions there. So next slide. On the environment, I think it's well known that our county has grown very fast. We've always been told that if we develop enough, it'll grow our tax base and it'll lower our taxes. But what's happened is that we usually end up with additional expenses for services and infrastructure that are needed. And so we're doing a study on our impact fees to make sure taxpayers are not bearing the burden of the new development, and more of that can be borne by the developers with impact fees. We know that those were only priced at about half what was recommended 10 years ago. So we want to adjust that. And then a study on the fiscal impacts of various kinds of development, so that we do the kinds of development that don't bust our budget. A land use navigator is going to give residents a tool to be able to follow development project applications as they go. It's a transparency tool, and it'll make it easier for developers as well, because everything will be electronic rather than on paper. And it's an expensive project, unfortunately, and it's taking time, but it'll be some of it will be up in this next year, and the following year it'll be complete. And then I consider our parks part of our environment, because it's where a lot of our residents are able to experience the nature. And so we've upped by $3 million in our park renovation funding. And that's in addition to the capital improvements like Fort Smallwood that we'll talk about in a minute. So next slide. On infrastructure, I mentioned there was a huge backlog on infrastructure, and a lot of that is schools, a couple new fire stations coming on this year. Councilman Volke mentioned the Mountain Road project, and that was an example of something where the county paid for the design, a lot of design work, but a state road, and then the state never stepped up to do their part. After hearing from local businesses that they didn't actually want some of the improvements that were there because they would have infringed on their properties. And so that was taken out of the budget. We don't want that to happen again. So on the Route 2 and Route 3 corridors, what we have done is we've got an MOU with SHA. We're once again dangling money in front of them to encourage them to invest in the failing intersections on those two main roads, and adding lanes where they're needed. So as you remember, 0.1% increase in the income tax was to permanent public improvements fund. And that is allowing us to address a lot of this backlog, including roads and Route 2 and 3 in particular. There's the new police training center is actually open. And then we are keeping up with the school construction plan that has been in place for some time. So next slide. And in your district, I won't go through all of these. You can actually go to aacounty.org/yourbudget and get these slides and this information. And you can go into the capital budget for the county and look up the status of every capital project. But I do want to say that Fort Smallwood is underway. We're still have every intention of completing that. There's new work that's going to be starting this year. You can see some of these other parks as well. Next slide. Okay, so here's where we stand. It's true that we want to end each year with a fund balance. It shows that we were conservative in our estimates, and when you have money left over at the end of the year, just like with any business, that's a good thing. So our fund balance this year looks to be in pretty good shape. In fact, higher than last year. The other big number that's important to look at is incremental recurring revenue. So that's the money that comes in over the previous year, not by raising anybody's tax rate, but simply through people's incomes increasing, or new development for new property coming onto the tax rolls, or property being assessed at higher values as a result of the market, and more revenue coming in. All those categories that Chris went through in revenue This year, it looks pretty good. It's going to be in the 60 to $80 million range. Most years in a good economy, we're in the 50 to $80 million range. And so that bodes well for the future. The near term future, longer term future is much more uncertain. And we did get help from the federal government. We got $101 million in funds to the county to help us pay for a lot of what you probably saw and read about with the health department doing contact tracing and testing and now vaccinations. And then in addition to that, a lot of the health and human service work that has gone on as a result of the economic impact of the pandemic. So the food distribution work and the eviction prevention work and list goes on and on. So that has been very helpful and helped us this year. Next slide. So with the additional incremental recurring revenue, that extra 60 to 80 million, there are things that immediately get taken by debt service increases, benefits increases, pay packages, things that we have no choice but to pay for. So we need that increase every year. And in a good year, there's some left over for discretionary increases. And that's really where every county comes to, every department comes to us with a budget request. They work with our budget office to put it together. And there are things called supplemental increases that are things the department believes they can do to improve services. And these are probably a lot of the things you're going to talk about tonight, the extra stuff that we're not doing that you think we should be doing. So that's why we're listening. Next slide. Most of those don't get funded in most years, but in a good year, some do. The property tax comparison, we do like to know where we stand compared to other counties. And we're at 93.4 cents of 100 on the property tax per $100 of assessed value. And that does put us seventh from the bottom. We're among the rural counties that have less infrastructure and fewer services. Central Maryland tends to be higher. Baltimore City, just be glad you're not paying property taxes there. It's way out of whack with the rest of the state, unfortunately. But we're proud of the fact that we're on the low side. We were actually over $1. Before the recession, there was a time where it's been coming down, partly as a result of our revenue cap. So we feel good about being at 93.4. Next slide. And then on the income tax side, yes, we're fourth from the bottom. Again, the central Maryland counties with more infrastructure and services and population, really density, are all at the state maximum of 3.2. Half the state is at that level, and we're proud to be at 2.81. Next slide. The impacts of COVID, I don't think it's a secret that folks at the top have done relatively well. Overall, stock market's done well. Folks at the bottom who do jobs that you can't work at home, jobs in entertainment, jobs in the restaurant industry, jobs that don't pay as much, you're 8 times more likely to have lost your job in this recession. These charts compare the last 3 recessions to this one, and that purple line that drops in the lower right corner is the bottom quarter of wage earners, much more likely to have lost work. Next slide. And there is a proposal at the state level. It was there last year. It's back again this year, passed the House, didn't pass the Senate because they closed early, which would allow counties to tax income on the income taxes progressively so that higher income people could be taxed at a slightly higher rate than lower income people. It used to be this way in the counties because they were piggybacked on the state income taxes that are progressive as are federal. That ended in 1999, and the Maryland Association of Counties supports this because they believe counties should have the authority to make these decisions rather than state government. And there's a proposal that would allow us to increase the rate on folks making over $500,000 a year. That's 1.4% of our taxpayers. And that would allow us, it's called the Tax Relief for Working Families Act. It would allow us to lower taxes on the bottom 98.6% and possibly have some money left over for services if we need them. Next slide. And I wanted to just remind you a few ways that you can, before we get into this, so that you can connect with county government to complain about things that need to get done or identify things that need to get done. 311 See Click Fix. Here it is on the homepage of the website. Next slide. And you can see that through Arundel Stat, we monitor every one of these requests for services. We call them cases, and we monitor how long they take to close by department. So it's a fairly new program. So the numbers have been increasing as people have gotten to know about it. We're 19,000 cases in 2020. And all of our departments are under pressure to deliver on these constituent concerns. And we hope you're satisfied with their performance on that. Next slide. This is something new this year. It's called Open Arundel, and it's a web portal through which you can look at the kinds of things that we look at in measuring performance of all of our departments and all of our work. We've added new performance metrics. That team has been meeting with every department, asking them what they would like to monitor. We look at what we should be monitoring in terms of performance. So you can click on these, go into any department you want, and explore. It's a fun site where you can learn a lot about your community and about county government. It's what we look at when we do our budgets as well. Next slide. And then we do have this online budget tool that is also kind of fun. We set it up so people could go in. It doesn't do everything that we'd like it to do to be able to actually create a budget, but you can add to and subtract from and get a sense of how it impacts the overall budget when you do that. Next slide. That's it. We need your input, and that's what we're about to get. So I will turn it over to Layla Jones, I believe. Is that right? Or is it Reese?
It's me tonight.
Reese Peak. Okay, I'm sorry. To Reese Peak, who is going to lead us through your community engagement and constituent service officer. He's going to lead us through this next section.
Great. So each speaker will have 2 minutes to give their public testimony, and they'll see a timer on the screen to help them keep track of time. And I'll announce at 10 seconds when your time is running up. Those who would like to speak, click the raise hand button at the bottom of their screens. You'll see that on the bottom right. I will call your name when it's your turn, and you'll be able to unmute yourself so you can speak. And the county executive and Councilman Volke won't respond to every comment for the sake of time, but they are taking notes, and I'm sure they will share their thoughts after we've heard from everyone. So please stick around to hear them. So looks like so far 4 participants have raised their hands. I'm going to announce them in groups of 4. So the first 4 people, it's going to be Stephanie Petruso, Joe Adenvola, Brendan Maltese, and then Kathy with no last name given. So let's start with Stephanie. If you would please unmute.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Petruso, the Digital Branch Manager for Anne Arundel County Public Library. I'm testifying this evening in support of the library's budget, as well as to share the tremendous impact libraries continue to have in our community, even in a pandemic. As soon as we closed in March, we moved to a fully virtual model that lasted until June when we moved to a hybrid model. Our goals were to provide as much access to needed library services as possible, as well as to facilitate community connections. Within a week, AACPL began offering virtual programs for both kids and adults. So far, more than 30,000 people have tuned in. We have significantly increased our collection of ebooks, e-audiobooks, and streaming movies. We now offer free access to both Udemy and Lynda training to give customers the skills they need to succeed in a changing workforce. We've also added live online assistance with job searching, applications, and applying for unemployment. We've added live chat assistance to allow customers to continue to get the in-person help they expect from our librarians. Some comments from our customers. I just want to tell you what an excellent job I think you're doing, continuing to offer critical services to the community in the midst of COVID-19. The workarounds you've come up with have given our family great comfort that we can still safely access the many offerings the library has. I recently discovered Udemy. Oh my God, I can't believe you guys offer this. I've taken a class with great success. I can't express how grateful I am to have this at my fingertips. You guys are a powerhouse of information, of modern relevant information. This book discussion was so valuable to me as a disabled member of the community. I have been homebound for the past 15 years, and this sort of program is my only lifeline to other people. I sincerely hope that you continue to offer online book discussions in the future. We know that the pandemic has changed the way people will use the library forever. Customers will
Please conclude. I'm sorry.
Customers will continue to expect and benefit from the online services provided by the library long after the world returns to normal. I urge your support of our requests for virtual services technology needs and staffing so the library can continue to innovate and provide the technologies that enhance lives and give community members the tools they need to be successful in our new reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Joe Adivinola.
That's correct. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, Joe.
Okay. My name is Joe Divinola, representing Anne Arundel County Professional Firefighters. Thank you, Councilman Volke and County Exec Pittman, for having these budget town hall meetings. And I thank you both for joining us a couple of years ago when we had our fire ops to get you acquainted with some of the tasks involved in firefighting. I know you both worked hard and gave a great effort. I have to say today, more than any other time in the history of Anne Arundel County Fire Department, our community is safer. Thanks to the SAFER grant and an administration for accepting this grant, our staffing has grown. We are not there yet to industry standards, but we're working diligently to achieve these standards. Today, we have county officials and a fire chief that listen to rank and file. Past administrations, both on the county council and the fire administrations, left a big void in our department. A void that has left firefighters and the community at risk with unfilled staffing levels, apparatus that is old and near extinct, and some fire stations that are deteriorating. We know now there is a real vision of keeping the community safe with the budget laid out by our Fire Chief Wolford. In District 3 alone, in the last several months, our chief has staffed several stations with at least 3 professional firefighters going out on an engine. At Station 13, Rivera Beach, Station 11, Orchard Beach, and Station 20, Lake Shore. We have county council members, a county exec, a fire chief, as well as us professional firefighters working together for a common goal. That goal is to keep our community safe. Our firefighters are the front line every hour battling this pandemic to keep our community safe. I ask all of you to fund Chief Wolford's fire department budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next is Brendan Maltese.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Maltese, and I'm the president of the Creekstone Village Townhouse Owners Association. Tonight is my 3rd year in a row advocating on behalf of our community for funding for the proposed improvements to Jumpers Hole Road between Ritchie Highway and Mountain Road. In the past, I've detailed the importance of this project, ranging from safety concerns to traffic relief, to ease of access for cyclists connecting to the B&A Trail, to walking access for workers going between the shopping center and the nearby communities. All of these concerns continue to grow as the area becomes more populated, especially with the construction wrapping up on 200 new apartment units here in Creekstone. Please do what you can to move this project out of the planning phase so we can have a safe and efficient entrance and exit for the community. I would also like to add that this project often gets mistaken for the other Jumpers Hole Road project in Severna Park. As a former Severna Park Middle School student who often missed the bus and had to walk to school, I know the importance of that project. However, the project I'm advocating for now is over here on the border of Districts 2 and 3, where Ritchie Highway, Mountain Road, Route 100, and Route 10 all converge. This is a very small stretch of Jumpers Hole Road, but it connects an awful lot of people and businesses and deserves modernization. Speaking for myself now, I strongly support the reevaluation of impact fees on new development. It's my understanding that these fees do not keep up with the purpose they are designed to serve. The people of this county are clearly asking for ways to slow down new development. Adjusting these fees would shift the focus to redevelopment projects so we don't have to lose any more green spaces. Last thing, please fund our school budget so we can finish catching up all teachers to the proper step and be best prepared to return to the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Next is Kathy.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Fitzgerald. I have been a volunteer in the Cat Gallery at Anne Arundel County Care and Control for 5 years. Thank you, Mr. Volke and Mr. Pittman, for your support of the shelter during last year's budget cycle and for visiting the shelter. Although Animal Care and Control continues to have many unmet needs, tonight I am focusing on the need for new cat cages. Those of us who volunteer with the cats do our best to give all of them some time out of their cages when we are there, but it is difficult to do given the number of cats typically in the gallery. They live day to day in 20-year-old plastic cubes that are 2 feet square. Each cage contains a litter box, food, water dishes, an elevated bed, and of course, the cat. Some cats are adopted after only a week or 2 at the shelter, but others stay in these cages for many weeks or sometimes many months. These plastic boxes do not meet modern minimum standards of care for animal shelters, including Maryland's own state standards. New, larger cages are needed that separate the cat's litter box from its living and eating area. Thank you for listening this evening.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to announce the next 4 names I'm going to call. The first one is Brandy Chavis, followed by Laura Valera Adeo, John Jason, and Darren Genson. So Brandy, if you're ready.
I am, thank you. Okay, sorry about that.
Brandy, are you still with us? Hearing a little feedback.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'm sorry. Having technical difficulties here.
Okay, Brandy, I'm gonna skip to Laura and then we'll go back to you at the end of the 4.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you great.
Okay, thank you. I'm testifying in support of the renewal of the Fort Smallwood Pass annual boat ramp passes. I thoroughly enjoy visiting all the county parks, and I purchase the annual county park pass each year. Last year, because of COVID, myself, my friends, along with many others, turned to outdoor activities. A large number of friends have boats and other PWCs. Getting out on the water gives us the ability to socialize, enjoy the bay, all while practicing safe social distancing. I don't feel like this summer will be any different. During the summer, we visit Fort Smallwood Park to use the boat ramp and enjoy the park, sometimes up to 4 times during the week and 1 to 2 days on the weekend. Since we frequented the park's boat ramp so often, it made sense to purchase the boat ramp pass. Living in northern Anne Arundel County, it's incredibly difficult to find public access to boat ramps. Fort Smallwood offers a very nice boat ramp, a beach area, restrooms, a well-kept and safe parking area, and it's close to where we live and work. If the annual park boat ramp passes are removed, in its entirety, we'll be forced to find other ways to access the water in the county. I would hate to think that the actions of a few would make us all pay the consequences. Perhaps even a weekday annual pass would be a viable solution. We ask that you reconsider the decision to get rid of the annual boat ramp pass at Fort Smallwood Park.
Thank you, Brandy. Next is Laura Valera Adeo.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Laura Varela Adeo. I'm the chair of the Anne Arundel County Immigrant Affairs Commission. I'm testifying in support of adding budget line items to hire Spanish-speaking and bilingual staff at county offices, especially the staff who serve the community and answer the phones. I'm also testifying in support of adding a line item to add software, telephone software that would allow press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, and any other languages that are growing quickly in this county. My request for this and my testimony is based on the information I have from the U.S. Census data from 2010 to July 2019. Of course, the 2020 data is not available yet. However, from that 9 years of data, we can see that the Hispanic community has grown over 200% in just 9 years. The businesses in Anne Arundel County, from what we know from 2018, were 14,000 employer establishments. Almost 10,000 of those were minority owned. In the city of Annapolis, the population is, what I understand, 39,223, and Hispanic Latino population of that is 20%, almost 21%. The immigrant community is living here, they're working here, they're getting back to the community, and I ask that that they're able to use and utilize county services and get information from our county in their native language. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and I do apologize for mispronouncing your name. The next is Jason.
Good evening. I'll just dig right in. The coronavirus has left people and businesses in disarray as our citizens have to fear for their health and their income simultaneously. Their protection should be one of our top priorities. Going forward, the county should be ready to assist in helping our citizens and our economy recover as we win the war against COVID. This pandemic laid bare the inequity and inequalities in housing, income, job opportunities, transportation, healthcare, and education all throughout the county. These need to be addressed. You know, I can't let a moment pass without talking about sidewalks in Pasadena. Well, Maryland SHA has started planning a sidewalk down Fort Smallwood Road and waits on an official request from the county. How fortuitous for us, the Riviera Beach Library is being rebuilt, so the schedules just might mesh. Still, just as last year, no Pasadena school has sidewalk support to safely meet the walking radius requirements laid out by the Board of Education. I would like to see a plan from the county to put in safe routes to schools around every AA County educational institution, and I'd like to see it tracked through Open Anne Arundel. I'd also like to talk about Edwin Rayner Road for a second. It can no longer support the traffic passing through it. Accidents and near misses are common, as Mr. Volke well knows, because he probably has an email folder dedicated to me telling him about it. The DPW has a plan for improvements, but it hasn't been updated or acted upon for several years. Can we do a better job of making such projects available online with their status, criteria for them being approved, and with more follow through on making them happen? We need to think towards the future. Better transportation, cleaner transportation, green energy, green living, protecting our environment, getting a handle on reckless development, and securing our future so AA County remains the best place for all. Finally, with apologies towards anyone that I miss, my sincere appreciation for Anne Arundel County Recs and Parks and Anne Arundel County Public Library for the fine work they do, and a shout out to all the county workers who helped keep us safe during this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I do ask everyone to be a little mindful of time. Next is Darren Gensen.
Good evening. My name is Darren Jensen. I am a volunteer working with the dogs at Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. We shelter volunteers see the needs of the pets up close and personal, including their sometimes complex and difficult to spot injuries and medical issues. And while the shelter staff is knowledgeable and quite frankly amazing, they are not veterinarians. Why is a staff veterinarian needed? Many of these animals come in as strays or abused and often visibly or not so visibly injured or sick. From a humane standpoint alone, a qualified veterinarian is essential. Now let us consider the fact that staff and volunteers need to handle, up close and personal, strange dogs who are often fearful and overly stressed. By itself, this requires caution and as much information about the animal as possible. Without a staff veterinarian to properly diagnose a possible injury or medical condition, we compound the risks not only of hurting the dogs or cats, but we compromise the safety of the people working in the shelter. In effect, since 2018, the minimum state standards of care for dogs and cats in a public shelter requires, and I quote, a veterinarian shall supervise the medical care and medical treatment of all animals in an animal shelter, end quote. It is now going on 3 years and the county has still not met this minimum standard. Instead, private donors are tasked with picking up the slack. Remember, it could be your lost or injured pet that needs our help. Please add a veterinarian to the shelter staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Darren. The next names I'm going to call are Michael Lofton, Debbie Johnson, Jared, I apologize, Krzyzewski, and Baron Parker. Those are the next four. So Debbie, if you can, oh, sorry, Mike, if you can.
Okay, I assume I'm on. Good evening, Mr. Pittman, Councilman Volke. I'm Mike Lofton. I'm a 50-year resident of Anne Arundel County. Mr. Pittman, I wanted to add my congratulations to your report card from the League of Conservation Voters. An A is, I've seen very few A's on my own report cards over the years, so that's quite an accomplishment. But I did want to draw attention to their notation about the lack of progress on public water access in Anne Arundel County. And it really is kind of a contradiction, as the county has such extraordinary waterfront assets. But sadly, many of these opportunities remain or underdeveloped. What's been missing is a plan and a leadership commitment to the plan. The folks that suffer the most from this are those that are people of limited income, Black people, brown people, and new Americans, the people that don't have the means to own waterfront. I urge you, Mr. Pittman, to provide the leadership that's really been missing here. And specifically, I want to talk about Mayo Beach Park. This is a park that's fully developed, has all the licenses and facilities to operate as a public beach, and yet it's open a small number of days each year. The county does operate a camp for special needs children 30 days a year. The park should be open the other 335 days a year. The facilities are there. There would be some incremental costs for staffing, but the assets there to not use it, particularly in these times when people are clamoring for water access, it's negligent, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lofton. Next is Ms. Jason.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Debbie Jason, and I live in District 3. As always, as my husband was talking about, I'd like to see more sidewalks in Pasadena. Also, I'm really looking forward to the new Rivera Beach Library, and I'm very thankful for the temporary one and for the librarians. As a member of the Anne Arundel County NAACP and showing up for racial justice in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, I'd like to know what the status of funding for police body and car cameras is. I'd also like to know what's going on with the county executive's proposed housing trust and with funding for the Human Relations Council to investigate discrimination complaints. And what about the plans for county departments to hire more Black people? For the upcoming budget, I want the county to focus on desegregating education, implementing the recommendations of the Joint Initiative for Eliminating the Opportunity Gap, increasing access to healthcare, improving health outcomes, turning affordable housing areas into areas of opportunity, conducting an affordable housing needs assessment, removing occupational segregation, increasing county support of Black businesses, implementing criminal justice and police reform, and expanding transit access to Annapolis. Thank you. I appreciate you having this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Jason. Next would be Jared. So Jared, please unmute. And it is your turn to give public testimony.
Hi, can you guys hear me without feedback?
I can hear you. There is slight feedback, but not too much.
All right, I wanted to take my time to talk to you guys about making sure that the infrastructure is developed responsibly. I'm not just talking about making sure that infrastructure is developed so that more people as they move in can get around and both in and out of the communities and the county. I wanted to make sure that you guys included in the plans, making sure that it's not just drivers that are considered. There are plenty of people who wish to, but are unable to commute through other methods. The largest employer in the state of Maryland happens to employ its people in this county. There is no truly safe way to get to that employer. The second largest employer in the state of Maryland is also in this county with limited access to be able to get to that place of employment using anything but a car. Living right next to Jumper's Hole, it's important to me that the Jumpers Hole project be moved forward, because the 3 years that I've been living here, each year I've had an incident where something has happened. 2 of those have involved needing to call 911. Making sure that infrastructure is developed in a safe way doesn't mean making it safe for cars. It means making it safe for humans.
Thank you for your commentary, Jared. The next speaker will be Baron Parker, and I would also like to make a call to anyone else in the audience who would like to speak, as Baron is the last individual with their raised hand. I see a couple more. We have Michael Vasquez, and if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand after Mr. Vasquez. So Baron, the time is yours.
Thank you very much. And I would like to say thank you to County Executive Pittman and Councilman Volke for this time. My name is Baron Parker, and I'm the president of the Stonehouse Run Homeowners Association. And one of the things that I would like to share is that this presentation has been very enlightening, especially with regards to showing where money is being utilized throughout the county and in different categories. What I would, however, like to ask as a consideration is part of the environmental portion that you talked about earlier. That being that we are dealing with, as part of development in the area, a significant rise in deforestation in the area. And we would also like to ask for consideration with coming up with a solution and partnering with the county on how to resolve that issue. I did send a communication to your offices earlier last week with regards to that. And I'm looking forward to an opportunity to seeing if we can somehow put our heads together and at least have a discussion around this, because we've taken steps as a community, but I feel that only a partnership with the county will take it to the next step to preserve the future of the ecosystem in this area. So I just wanted to put that there, and also thank you very much for your time on behalf of myself and the residents of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Michael Vasquez is next, followed by Dawn Marino. And if anyone else would like to speak, speak after Ms. Marino. So Michael, time is yours.
Thank you. My name is Michael Vasquez. Thank you, Mr. Pittman and Mr. Volke, for allowing your constituents to speak at this event today. I am a teacher and a technology buff, and I work with special needs students, and I'm also Hispanic and considered a minority in the county by some. Recently, with the advent of COVID, we found that technology issues abounded in our district for students, not just Black and Brown students, but also rural students who did not have and do not currently have access to internet or technology in their homes. The challenge of the opportunity gap closing, which the school board is in favor of and has implemented as a process, is an ongoing process that cannot just be simply completed by the school board or the Board of Education. The challenge of closing the digital divide is not only one of staying up to date on technology and its uses in the classroom. The challenge lies in ensuring that all citizens have access to modern technology, high-speed internet, and education regarding how to access and use the technology available outside the classroom. A report from over 2 decades ago conducted by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration relates the digital divide to race and socioeconomic class, not just racial class, as a function of income, but also across all income levels. There are increasing racial differences in family computer ownership. And since 1999, families that were 2-parent white families or more than $35,000 in earnings were 2 to 6 times more likely to have internet service. By 2020, a report by the Alliance of Excellent Education showed that the digital divide has shrunk, but still 31% of students and their parents in the district do not have equal access to high-speed internet. I would ask that you work in tandem to allow and bring in high-speed internet to areas that are underserved at this time. Thank you. And also I would like if you could put some budget towards sidewalks so my students can walk to school and not have to walk along the busy highways of Mountain Road and Edward Rainer. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It looks like our final comment tonight will be from Dawn Marino. Dawn, the time is yours.
Good evening. If you've already covered this, I apologize in advance. I joined you late, but I would like to talk about Fort Smallwood Park. I know that myself and my friends that enjoy the park do not want the park to close for construction. We're reasonable people, and we understand that at times certain parts of the park will have to close because of construction. But we endured a long closure of the area around the pond last year for beach replenishment, and we don't feel that we had to endure such a long period of that area being closed, that it was for the convenience of the people working at the beach. So we'd like to see more consideration for the people using the park. There is absolutely no need for a concession stand at that park. The people who use the park are mostly day trippers, meaning they're there for the whole day and they bring their own supplies with them, or walkers or birders who are there a short period of time and bring what they need with them to the park. As taxpayers, we will be subsidizing a concession stand in the future because it will not be well utilized. We'd rather see a food truck come from time to time rather than a concession stand. There is a need for the bathrooms to be updated, the maintenance building to be updated, and the barracks to be updated. But those are the only needs that should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dawn. And before I throw it over to Councilman Volke, I want to read a comment in the chat. It says, my name is Jessica. I live in Creekstone Village, and I'm speaking in support of improvements between Ritchie Highway and Mountain Road on Jumpers Road. Please consider moving forward for this project so the community can appreciate it sooner. Thank you. And with that, I would like to move to the next portion and go back to the county executive and Councilman Volke.
Floor is yours,
Am I up?
council member. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trumbauer. Thank you, Mr. Peak. Thank you to everybody who came out this evening and took some time to share your budget priorities with us and hear from us, specifically, the county executive giving that nice overview of what the budget is going to look like. Heard some good things from people. I knew that we were probably going to hear about Fort Smallwood Park. I've been communicating with the community pretty extensively about that, and also been talking with the Rec and Park staff, who have been very open to looking at changes on that design of what they're looking at down there. So I'm hopeful that we can work together on that with the community to make sure that the way we're spending your money at that park makes sense. I agree with a lot of the comments that Ms. Marino said about things that we can do with the money and where it makes sense to use it. Also, I've heard from a couple people tonight, but I know Mr. Maltese has been talking for a number of years about the improvements there on Mountain Road, specifically between, Jumpers Hole, but between Mountain and Ritchie Highway, and the improvements needed there. And that is certainly something that I would have liked to have seen last year when the money from our district moved out of the Mountain Road project, that 20 million. If we could have shoved, 7 or 8 million over to that Jumpers Hole project, that would have been nice. So I'm hopeful that we can see that come back to our district, that money, and be used for that. So obviously the ball's in the county executive's court first, and then after that, the budget comes to the council, and we'll take a look at what has been proposed. In terms of the folks who came out from Animal Care and Control, again, great to hear from you every year. Heard from you a lot last year, so thank you for coming out again and advocating. I know the cages issue is one that we heard about last year in the staff vet, and that's certainly something that we can look at. And appreciate the firefighters, as always, doing the work that they do. And that SAFER grant that obviously just came down to the council through way of a supplementary budget appropriation that was approved by all of us. So we'll see where that puts us in terms of staffing. ultimately, a lot of things, as everybody knows, budgets are roadmaps, but they're also a statement of priorities. And so as we work through it, we will do our best to try to take all of these things into account and see where that puts us. So I appreciate all the comments. Thank you again. It's a privilege to have the chance to represent you on the council, and look forward to working with all of you as we move through the budget this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Volke. I want you to know that while you may see your councilman criticizing the county executive from time to time on social media and maybe at council meetings even every once in a while, that he and I actually get along pretty well outside of the, people are surprised actually that how much everybody on the council agrees on. We have two parties there represented, and sometimes votes do come down to party, but the vast majority of the things that get passed through the council get passed 7-0. And we do communicate regularly and work together. So thank you for everything that you're doing for your district. And I can guarantee you that your councilman fights hard for funding for your district. So I just want to run through a few of the things that were covered. Libraries, I always like hearing from the libraries. They are like community centers to us, and I'm glad that we've been able to invest in the Rivera Library there. Fire, thank you to Joe Adinavola, who represents the firefighters union and advocates. I am in regular contact with your fire chief, and she talks about your budget requests and their budget requests, and it's good to see the union and the administration and fire working hand in hand. And we understand that the needs are great still, particularly on the apparatus that are getting quite old. Everybody wants sidewalks. I get it. I'm glad to hear it. It's one of those infrastructure things that is easy as you grow a county with suburban sprawl type of development to leave behind. And so now we have to go back and clean up and try to add the sidewalks and the really all of the multimodal transportation that was talked about tonight. Move Anne Arundel is the plan. It is a multimodal, so that it's not just about moving cars, it's about moving people. And you'll see that our development priorities for the county are transit-oriented development at a handful of sites. If you're interested in this topic, go to Plan 2040. It's just been sent from my office after a lot of community engagement to the county council, and they're going to be considering it in the coming weeks. So it's time to make your voice heard on growth and development policy in Anne Arundel County through Plan 2040. You can find it online. Animal care and control. We heard from you last year. We did the dog cages. Now it's the cat cages. And I got to tell you, I was just over at my mom's house right before this, and I won't tell you her age because she'd kill me. But during COVID, she's kind of lonely not being able to see many people, and so she got herself a cat, and I was just over there with that cat. And I just want to thank everybody at Animal Care Control that provides homes for these animals when they're abandoned by their owners or they're left with no owners. And so I understand the need for the cat cages, and I'm not allowed to make promises at these meetings, but I can tell you that we hear you loud and clear. And same with the need for staff veterinary assistants that we're obligated, I understand, by state law to provide some level of staff veterinary care at our animal care and control. Water access, it's something I believe in strongly. I mean, I get that we're not moving fast enough. We're never moving fast enough. I mean, we are. We got a little slower than we had hoped on the Beverly Triton $5 million investment there, but they are going to be breaking ground this year, and they're already doing the beach restoration work. And we're moving forward at Fort Smallwood. We're doing the boat ramp at Solly boat ramp, and I can tell you that as a result of these budget town halls, I have been talking to my staff and visiting some sites, and we know we need to do better, and that's our intention. Quiet Waters Retreat as well, new land that we just acquired on the water. Spanish language access. There's actually a plan that is almost complete for the county that's required by the federal government to have department by department a language access plan. And during COVID, it's been particularly important and clear. And I want to thank the Immigrant Affairs Commission for bringing some of these issues to our attention. Immigrants, particularly the Latino population, has been hard hit by COVID. And we need to be able to do a better job of reaching those communities. And language is absolutely a barrier that we have to overcome. Body cameras are underway. The first cameras will be on officers, I believe, in July, and by fall, later in the fall, I think they'll all have them. It's a program that I think is going to it's going to be appreciated by the officers and the community. And we believe in transparency in government, and this is transparency with the folks in government that are in our communities every single day. So we're looking forward to getting those onto our officers. Without going on and on, I want to mention, I think it was Brian Parker who mentioned the need for additional work beyond the forest conservation bill that we did on protecting our natural resources. And if you look in Plan 2040, there's a pretty innovative proposal that we want to move forward with on a natural resource conservation ordinance that would require developers to identify all the natural resources on land and score those applications based on their ability to protect those resources. And then opportunity gap and the digital divide became very clear to all of us. It is a school district and county government joint effort, and there is an implementation plan on the recommendations. You'll be hearing more about that soon. I believe they'll be going to the council as well. They've been to the school board with the implementation plan. It's a long-term effort, but it is about what happens not just in our schools, but what local government does to address some of the inequities that are the cause of that opportunity gap. And as far as the digital divide goes, we're working with a community-based group, Anne Arundel Connecting Together, church-based group that has prioritized increasing digital access through some of the providers, and we're going to be focusing on that. Made progress, but we've got a long ways to go. So I love the priorities that are being presented. I love doing these. I apologize for forgetting District 6 is next week. Don't tell anybody in Annapolis or that area that I forgot all about them, but we'll be there next week. That'll be our last one. And I really appreciate everything that we're hearing. Thank you for participating.